Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, How AI-Driven Personalization is Redefining Customer Loyalty. We're excited to have you. I'm Megan Billingsley with Retail Dive, and I'll be moderating today's event. But before we dig in, I have a few housekeeping items to share with you. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets you can use. All the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. Please note the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button located in the top right-hand corner of your presentation window. We encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A widget. We'll try to answer these during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. Please know we do capture all questions. Finally, following the presentation, you will be able to access the on-demand recording of the webinar using the same link from today's live event. For today's webinar, we will be hearing from Gopi Vikrant, Associate Principal at ZS, a seasoned decision sciences and analytics executive with over 15 years of expertise in AI, personalization, and customer analytics across the retail, consumer packaged goods, travel, and hospitality industries. Thank you, Gopi, for joining us today. We're excited to get started. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Megan, thank you for that introduction, and welcome everyone to this session today. In today's session, I'm going to cover what are some of the key trends that are driving the industry, and we'll also focus on some of the use cases that different companies are leveraging on AI-driven personalization, and what are some of the common setbacks, how are they addressing them, and where is AI-driven personalization getting implemented, and potentially what are some tangible next steps that you can think about on how you can engage the customers and increase revenue. So when we look at today's trends, 2020 is absolutely been disruptive in terms of the acceleration that we are seeing from a digital standpoint of view and consumer adoption. In fact, in Q1 2021, there has been a market spike in terms of the total acceleration that we see. Post that, we see that there is a little bit of a leveling off in terms of the total digital sales that are going around. If what we see in UK is any indication, we expect this trend to continue forward. What this has done is it has definitely jolted a lot of corporations to rethink what are they going to do in terms of customer engagement, specifically one-on-one personalized customer engagement, and how that can drive incremental revenue. And in some of the research that we have seen, we see that close to 74% of online shoppers say that they get frustrated when the content is not relevant to their interests, and 77% of the customers recommend or spend more for brands that provide a personalized experience. And when we look at from a business standpoint of view, 89% of the businesses have reported that they have seen improved results when they have implemented some form of personalization in this point in time. We also looked at 125 marketing executives. We have surveyed more than 125 marketing executives to understand what are they doing from a personalization standpoint of view. And what we found is that 90% of the respondents plan to increase driving one-on-one engagement in the next 12 to 24 months. And more than two-thirds of them mentioned that they are looking at deploying an AI solution to achieve this vision. And 75% of the executives cited that the efforts that they have done from personalization have yielded anywhere between 10 to 20% plus in incremental revenue or customer growth. And this is specifically true for businesses that have a focus on direct sales channels, or they're trying to implement a direct-to-customer sales strategy in the business. And they are more likely to invest in personalization in their efforts than other companies. That said, everyone is talking about AI and AI-driven personalization. Very few have been able to successfully deploy it. Only 16% of the executives surveyed have said that they have deployed an AI solution for 1 or more years. So there's still a lot of room for growth in terms of where AI-driven personalization is going on, and it is still very early today in the system. So that is the state of the industry. And one fact that is coming out, which is pretty much undisputed at this point in time, is that brands need to figure out a way to leverage their data assets and unlock customer growth to meet expectations. Most retailers have a lot of rich data. It may not be in the right form to use, but there is a lot of data ranging from point of sales, digital activity, current business protocols and marketing campaigns, loyalty rewards, and when there are when the apps are present well, then you have location intelligence and other data coming in. All this forms a very, very rich data fabric for AI-driven personalization, and that can meaningfully drive incremental customer engagement and revenue if done right. And that's what we are observing across multiple industry verticals. Now, at ZF, we are closely working with many Fortune 500 companies to drive personalization efforts. And a few use cases that are coming out here are, if you take retail, tailored interventions that can prevent churn by countering and prioritizing bad experiences is coming out as a really interesting use case. While there is a lot of focus and efforts and money spent on acquiring customers, businesses are also suffering from an incredible amount of leakage because there is a bad customer experience, and this could happen for many, many reasons. It could be a bad substitution, or it could be an out-of-stock situation, or the delivery experience has been bad and the items have been damaged. Whatever that might be, millions of instances of these bad experiences are happening on an ongoing basis. And what we are finding is that a blanket response to this, either it could be a reward or incentive, is not going to work because that's going to be really, really expensive from a business standpoint of view. So one of the things that AI-driven personalization is doing is figuring out, first of all, which of these bad experiences need to be prioritized for direct incentive-based rewards to stop the attrition or churn. And there might be a large number of cases where what the firm needs to do is to acknowledge the context of the customer and then potentially either leverage an existing promotion to address a bad experience, or you might be able to, in many cases, you are just acknowledging the experience. And for example, in the case of an out-of-stock situation, you're going back and telling them that, okay, we know that you were looking for this item and that was not there. We are very sorry about it. But as soon as the item comes back in stock, then the intervention is going back to the customer saying that this particular item is available again, and potentially add in any specific promotion that is necessary to drive that. So this form of selectively addressing bad experiences through AI-driven personalization helps to prevent a lot of churn that's happening downstream, and that is turning out to be a very valuable tool in terms of retaining the customers better at this point in time. Similarly, if we look at travel and hospitality, one of the things that one of the use cases that is emerging out and which has great value is how can you identify some of the changing customer behavior to drive additional growth. An example for this is that over the last year or so, there is a new trend that has come out from new urban remote workers who might have taken a vacation or a travel once in a year in the past. So all their past historical behavior might show that they have done a trip or two trips in a year. But now, let's say they're taking a trip for 2 or 3 weeks to Hawaii. It may not be purely a vacation. It might be that they're working from there. So AI is able to understand who these customers are and what are some of these emerging trends are, and then recommend saying that for people who have gone to Hawaii a month down the line, maybe they might still want to do another trip to Puerto Rico or another destination which is very friendly for remote workers. So how do you identify these emerging trends and figure out which customers need to be targeted and what are the recommendations that might work for them? So that is coming out to be a very prominent, very interesting use case in the travel sector. Similarly, we have also seen that for customer acquisition, what kind of incremental ancillary revenue and other products can be purchased. These can be either through personalized offers or coupons. So that's another interesting use case and that is emerging. In the F&B space, this is one of the industries which has gone through major disruption because everything from the last year and a half has changed in the F&B industry. So how do you understand how customer life cycle is evolving and what are the new drivers of purchase behavior becomes really, really important. In this case, AI is able to detect and target which customers require what type of interventions. For some customers, it might be that a meal plan or a package kind of a deal might work out better, whereas for some others who are adopting new healthy routines, you're trying to figure out which customers do I need to target and what kind of healthy routine they might be on and drive accordingly. A similar interesting use case is, again, figuring out for specific occasions, for example, after a holiday period, who are the customers that we might want to really target with promotional offers to bring them back to drive additional engagement from the customer standpoint of view. These are some interesting use cases that are popping up, which are driving immediate opportunity for the customers. And one thing that we have also observed is, which is relevant across verticals, is how are enterprises understanding customer elasticity. I believe that elasticity is one of the most under-leveraged concepts, and multiple industries can discover which customers are elastic to marketing interventions and to what product categories. If you're a business, then AI can help you understand how elastic is a customer to a particular marketing intervention and what are the categories of products that they're elastic to. And then using that, you're able to better target them with the personalized intervention that can drive incremental revenue. So these are some of the use cases. This is not an exhaustive list, but here are a few interesting use cases that many of you in the audience could think about when you're thinking about AI-driven personalization. And I'm happy to address any questions that are tied to these or adjacent use cases that are possible. But definitely, many of these do not require extensive efforts. They're easy to bootstrap in an enterprise organization, and you can try it out on specific use cases to see what kind of incrementality that AI-driven personalization can provide. And in order to do some of these use cases, there are 4 key innovations that AI can bring to the table, and these are probably critical in any use case that you're thinking about. The first is automated feature engineering. And what we mean by that is, given a business objective, for example, you can take churn as an objective, or prioritizing churn, or prioritizing cross-sell or upsell, whatever the objective that you're looking at, is there a way for the business to quickly figure out what are all the different data patterns and features which are affecting that particular objective? And this is where automated feature engineering can come into play, which is to discover these data patterns in a quick manner. And when we say data features, it's not just the raw data variables that are going in, but AI can figure out combinations of these variables. For example, in the case of this, let's say churn as a use case, it can be a combination of gap between 2 transactions that the customer is experiencing raised to the power of some exponent, and combine it with some other customer behavior. That might be the feature that will come out as important for that particular objective. So automated data feature engineering becomes very, very key in AI-driven personalization. Now, the second piece is being able to leverage all these features and then coming up with very granular micro cohorts, which can represent almost customer or small group level opportunities that the business can act upon. And then taking the product offer personalization, this is where the core of the AI engine comes into place, which can which can tag upon the first and the second on the automated feature engineering and discovering micro cohorts and determine for each of these customers or for each of these cohorts, what is the right product offer combination that can be deployed at scale. Now, the last piece of this puzzle is going to be rapid micro experimentation. So this is to figure out which of these cohorts require what type of offer combinations and what is the right size and scale for that particular combination. For example, if the business can figure out that an offer X is is performing really, really well, but it might not be profitable to provide that offer to all customers or scale it up to a large population. So experimentation can determine what offer variant is working out very well, and also figure out whether this particular product offer combination or a personalized intervention needs to be sent to 10,000 people, 50,000 people, or 100,000 people. So the combination, these four things working together is going to be really, really key to drive AI-driven personalization. And that's what we are observing in all the implementations that we are looking at. And what this will also allow the business to do is to figure out some of the questions which might be hard to answer today. For example, the business needs to understand what are some of the disruptions that are happening and how is it affecting the customer base. So that is something the features that I mentioned earlier can help you understand. And also, another question to understand is what are addressable leakage opportunities in the customer base, and where can I appropriately deploy marketing interventions in this case. And another key question that comes up often is what behaviors are impacting customer responses, specifically to cross-sell and upsell efforts that the enterprise is doing, and also distinguishing between seasonal spending patterns versus emerging trends that I can build upon and monetize them effectively before competitors might spot them. These are all some of these questions are harder to answer today without a personalization engine or a system or a mechanism in place. And last but not the least, as I mentioned earlier, experimentation becomes a key because a lot of times you might not know what customer groups are going to respond how. This is where an integrated testing strategy can help you. And these are some of the key business challenges that these AI innovations are helping to drive. So one of the questions that always comes up is, how do we understand what are some of the challenges that businesses are facing when they try to do AI-driven personalization? So in our survey, we have also looked at what are some of the executives saying about challenges that they're facing. And we looked at more than 125 marketing executives, and here are the top challenges that they're facing. One of the biggest challenges is that lack of data or variation in targeting efforts that have been done in the past. So typically this ends up being the cold start problem where the data is not present, or in the past the business has just done mass email blasts or mass campaigns, and there is no variation that an advanced analytics model or an AI model can detect. And this is one of the key challenges. What we have also observed is that when you have a cold start problem, the best thing is not to be stuck there, but figure out a specific use case. As an example, and we have definitely looked at some of the examples in the prior slides, and pick a specific use case and start experimenting on it. So this usually helps in building that critical initial response data that you need, which will allow you to overcome the challenge that is. One of the other challenges is also not spending enough time in identifying the right use case. So personalization as an effort a lot of times ends up being a massive exercise which people are trying to implement across the customer database. And that always ends up taking too long to implement. And this is where identifying specific use cases that the business can act upon will come very, very handy. Another challenge that we have also observed is AI being a black box, or integrating AI into existing systems. So this has been a common issue that we are observing across enterprises when they're trying to implement an AI-based engine. There is no transparency back to internal analytics, data science, as well as marketing teams. So choosing the right solution, which provides a transparency to the business, is going to be really key in change management as well as adoption criteria. Another challenge that we have observed is that the marketing technology stack is either in flight or they're currently changing the marketing technology stack. This is where you have a new CRM implementation that's in play, or you have a new CDP that's getting implemented. So one of the things that we're observing in firms which are able to successfully deploy personalization is that they realize that the marketing technology stack will continue to evolve, and there is no super stable state where everything is going to be completed and they can operate on top of it. So in this case, it's best to go ahead with the personalization effort with a solution or a solution provider and an organization which is able to keep this underlying fact into consideration, that the marketing technology stack is going to continue to change, and the personalization engine or the effort needs to operate on top of it. And that would be more of figuring out what is the right solution that is there. Last but not the least, two things which often pop up is the time it takes for personalization to deliver value, and also how do you not get stuck at a proof of concept phase. So these are two other challenges that are commonly present. And time to surface value is in a way closely tied to how well are the use cases being identified. If the use case is not identified correctly and it's not scoped out correctly, then it definitely takes a long time to see any value. On the other hand, if you're able to pick the right use cases, then what we're seeing is that within a 3 to 6 month time frame, you're able to show initial value and then keep scaling those use cases to larger and larger parts of the customer base, eventually covering all of the customer base that is there in this case. So these are the various challenges that we have heard from executives who are trying to deploy AI-driven personalization or generalized personalization efforts. And we're definitely happy to dig into some of these challenges and how people are addressing them in more detail, or some of the interesting answers that people have found to deploy personalization efforts despite these challenges and realize opportunities. When personalization has been deployed, that is where we are definitely seeing incremental revenue generation efforts. So, and this comes in many forms. It could be around average order size increasing from customers, or improving cross-sell and conversion and incremental digital orders that are coming from customers, or just better one-on-one customer engagement. And overall, on an average, personalization is driving anywhere around 15 to 20% in incremental revenue from these efforts, and that is going to be a really, really meaningful driver of growth for many brands and businesses. So definitely, there is a lot of value that you can identify by doing AI-driven personalization, and we can look at any questions that are there from the audience and see and deep dive into those. So, what are some next steps that can be done from a personalization standpoint of view? I would say that there are probably 5 things that you can take away. One is thinking dynamically and looking for emerging viable use cases. And emerging viable use cases essentially look into what are places where we can deploy personalization and what is potentially the incremental value that's coming in. Typically, these are ranging from addressing retention problems in the case where businesses have a lot of leakage in their business, or looking at cross-sell and upsell of opportunities on the digital sales that are trending up, or you're looking into addressing specific life cycle-based interventions. These are all possible use cases which can deliver quick value. The second is getting a better understanding of the customer base. So in most businesses, we still see that while the data might be there in different places, there is still no comprehensive understanding of how the customer behavior is changing. And many times it is too late before these customer behaviors are detected. So that would be an immediate area where the personalization efforts can help and match the offers to the specific customer needs. And this is dovetailing on the earlier aspect of understanding your customer behavior a bit better and identifying these trends much faster than before. And last but not the least is test. And testing becomes really, really important. So whatever offers and product offer combinations that we are able to find, we found that when you're able to test it with 70-30 or 60-40, whatever the composition is, not only are we able to identify better variants of the offers, but it also shows a lot of improvement in conversion on some of the personalization efforts. Last but not the least, start today, learn, and then adapt based on some of the results and the findings that are coming out. And that should get you going from a personalization standpoint of view in your own enterprise. Thank you, and we'll be looking at any questions that are coming up.
Great. Thank you so much, Gopi. We do have a few minutes left to field some of those questions. So if you do have a question, you can use the Q&A widget on the left-hand side of your screen. So to kick us off, our first question is, sounds like a long journey to personalization. How easily can I do this? Is there a path for fast time to value?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So when we look at personalization and when we have seen personalization efforts that are done right, there are two parts, two scenarios that we see happening. One is an enterprise embarks on a large-scale personalization exercise, and this usually takes a lot of time to figure out. On the other hand, we have seen enterprises which are taking a little bit more of an agile approach, where you identify a specific use case and deploy it as a pilot. And these pilots usually take much lesser time, around 3 to 6 months, to deliver value or results on these pilots. So it would be really important to identify the use case and use it as a pilot approach to drive personalization. And once you get the results 6 months down the line, then that can be used as a business case for deploying personalization at a larger scale. So that's when the full-scale integration into the CRM systems as well as other systems that are there would come into play. But by that time, the pilot would have already delivered some results, and the business case becomes that much more easier to push that through.
Great, thank you. Our next question says, with personalization, how long to test and learn something? Is it weeks or months, et cetera?
So this would typically vary from business to business, but as a thumb rule, depending upon the marketing frequency that is there, some businesses would be engaging customers on a weekly basis, or they might have multiple touch points during a week. But when we look at test and learn, typically 30 to 45 days which is 4 to 6 week time frame, is good enough to look at what are the tests that have been deployed in the past, and then what are the results that are coming in, and make adjustments for the next salvo of tests or the next wave of tests that the business wants to run at this point.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, what data or technology limitations can hinder personalization?
So as I mentioned earlier, the lack of data has always been one of the key challenges that is there. So it's not as much as a lack of data, but having this data in a usable form becomes the larger challenge. In most cases, what can address this particular issue is to do a quick customer 360, which is essentially bring in what are the minimum viable data elements that are necessary to drive personalization. I would say that would be POS transaction data. If there is a loyalty program, then you'd want to get the loyalty program with the customer profile and some demographics and as well as the past reward behavior into the equation. And also any past marketing campaign and business protocols that are there. Last piece is it could be really interesting if that data is available is more around digital activity. This is if you have a mobile app or a website where the customers are engaging in, then whatever data that we can get from there. If these four pieces are there, even if they're there in disparate locations, usually a quick combination of these four through the right personalization solution will allow you to move forward from the data on the data technology limitations elements that are there.
Great, thank you. Our next question says, you talked about importance of explainability. What are you doing to enhance this and or algorithms that you are deploying?
So one of the issues with personalization and specifically AI-driven solutions has been the fact that they're a bit of a black box. So the business or the analytics or marketing executives, the marketing team might not know why the engine is recommending a set of recommendations and what is driving it. So when we are looking at personalization efforts, this is one of the key aspects that we are accounting for. When we look at a personalization decision in an enterprise, there are at least three different stakeholders that come into play. One is around the marketing executives, the second is data science or analytics teams, and the third is around marketing and IT operations who might be responsible for the last mile delivery of the marketing intervention. Now, each of these stakeholders have certain requirements on what is the kind of transparency that is required from a personalization solution. For example, for marketing executives, you would want to understand what are the product offer combinations that are being delivered and to which customers, and then potentially a rationale around why that particular offer is being provided. So when we are looking at personalization solutions, that is something that we are constantly keeping a watch out for, is to provide business explanation on why a particular customer segment or a customer cohort is getting offers and what are potentially features that are driving that particular behavior. From a data science standpoint of view and data science analytics team standpoint of view, they'd want to have much more transparency into how the model is performing, what are the variables and data features which are coming out as important, and also ability to control or ability to mute certain features or variables if necessary. So for them, understanding the model, what is happening inside the model, what are the features which are driving the accuracy, becomes really, really important. So solutions need to have, especially either user interface, which will allow them to understand it and then rerun where it is necessary, is going to be really key. As far as marketing operations is concerned, this is where a bit more of any AI engine or AI solution that's being deployed, they need to ensure that it is integrating into, whether it's a CRM system or a marketing cloud or Adobe Marketing Cloud, whatever is the system that they're using, it is integrating into it in a seamless manner and not adding additional layer of work. So these are the pieces, these are the three components which will definitely enhance the explainability of the solution and in turn ensure that it is easy to adopt from a business standpoint.
Great, thank you. Our next question says, how do I get organizational senior stakeholder buy-in on initiatives like this? Should I hire a lot of data scientists?
So that's an interesting question. So data scientists definitely are going to play a key role in this effort. So, but that alone is not going to be enough. As I mentioned earlier, the personalization, if you look at the value chain, data science plays a key role. So does marketing operations, and so does the marketing team. So in this case, I think you need probably 2 or 3 things in addition to the data scientists. Definitely, it's good to have a few data scientists who understand the space and are able to work with it. You also need to think about, is it a buy or a build scenario? So buy would be getting a solution which is reasonably transparent, which will work in conjunction with your data science team. And then the build is you're going from scratch and building the entire personalization, which is a little bit harder to do. So it's going to be a choice that the organization makes. So let's say the choice has been that we're going to have a few data scientists who will help you understand the problem as well as figure out where opportunities are. And you have a solution which an AI engine which will help you deliver that or drive it, right? So that would be an ideal scenario. Now, in terms of organizational buy-in, you definitely need an executive sponsor. In most cases, it's kind of the CMO or the chief analytics officer or the SVP. And the good news is that most organizations are looking at investing into it, and this is also what we found in our survey of more than 125 marketing executives. Everybody is trying to look into what can they do. The biggest element in getting the buy-in is going to be around the business case and what are the use case. In this scenario, you'll have to define. You're going to look at your past business performance and identify 2 or 3 use cases which represent a meaningful amount of opportunity, let's say around $25 million of incremental opportunity that you can drive. And that would be enough to get the business case done for a pilot. And once you do the pilot, then in 6 months, if there are enough results that are coming out, then you can definitely build up the business case on top of it. That's one way to go about it. And then the second way is a purely top-down, which is it becomes a very important strategic initiative where you have a little bit of a blank check, although that's a little bit of a rare situation.
Great, thank you. Well, that is all the time that we have today for questions. We would like to thank everyone for joining us. If we were not able to answer your question, please know that we do capture all submitted comments, and someone from the team will follow up in the coming days. As a reminder, the recording of today's webinar will be available via the same link you accessed for today's live presentation. Thanks again to Gopi Vikrant, and of course to you, our audience, for joining us. Have a great day, everyone.